Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Crime drama, an episode of Mr. Keen, Tracer of Lost Persons, starring Bennett Kilpack, going back 69 years to February 10th, 1944, and the case of the boy who uses big words. And we thank you for spending part of your Friday with us here. This is the 10th day of February, 41st day of the year, 325 days remaining until we get to 2024. The YWCA, founded in New York City on this date in 1870. In 1923, Texas Tech University, founded as Texas Technological College in Lubbock, Texas. In 1933, the New York City-based Postal Telegraph Company introduced the first singing telegram. In 1933, in round 13 of a boxing match at New York City's Madison Square Garden, Primo Carnera knocked out Ernie Schaff, killing him. In 1954, President Eisenhower warned against U.S. intervention in Vietnam, and in 1962, captured American spy Francis Gary Powers exchanged for captured Soviet spy Rudolph Abel. 1967, the 25th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified. It dealt with succession to the presidency and established procedures both for filling a vacancy in the office as vice president, as well as responding to presidential disabilities. It would come in handy 6 years later when Spiro Agnew and Richard Nixon both resigned. 3 years later, on this date in 1970, then Vice President Spiro Agnew made a speech in which he described his disgust for Vietnam deserters and draft dodgers.
As for these deserters, malcontents, radicals, incendiaries, the civil and the uncivil disobedience among our young, SDS, PLP, Weatherman 1, Weatherman 2, the Revolutionary Action Movement, Panthers, Lions, hippies, yippies, tigers alike, I'd rather swap the whole damn zoo for a single platoon of the kind of young Americans I saw in Vietnam.
Then Vice President Spiro Agnew on this date in 1970. In 1974, Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Peter Rodino, said the committee might have to call President Nixon in to answer questions on Watergate and to settle this issue once and for all.
We are going to inquire into the facts as our committee staff is now doing, and if we find that there is evidence before us, and if we are able to determine what an impeachable offense is so that the committee can all agree, then I'm sure that the matter that we will have before us will be determined in a way that there may not be any necessity. If, however, there is a necessity to call in the president, in order that we have a complete, thorough, and careful inquiry, in order to settle this question once and for always, then it will be our responsibility to have to call in the president.
House Judiciary Committee Chairman Peter Rodino on this date in 1974. A fire at the Las Vegas Hilton Hotel Casino killed 8 and injured 198 on this date in 1981. In 1989, Ron Brown elected chairman of the Democrat National Committee, becoming the first African-American to lead a major American political party. The IBM supercomputer Deep Blue defeated chess champion Garry Kasparov in 1996 for the first time. In 2005, North Korea confirmed the world's suspicions by declaring it had nuclear weapons.
선민주주 인민공화국 외무성은 미국의 대조선적 대시 정책으로 하여 조성된 엄중한 정세에 대처하여 다음과 같이 천명한다. 첫째, 우리는 육자회담을 원했지만 회담 참가 명분이 마련되고 회담 결과를 기대할 수 있는 충분한 조건과 분위기가 조성되었다고 인정될 때까지 불가피하게 육자회담 참가를 무기한 중단할 것이다.
a North Korean news reader delivering the government statement. In that announcement, North Korea said it needed nuclear weapons to deal with a hostile United States, and then it was dropping out of six-party disarmament talks. In 2007, then, Illinois Senator Barack Obama announced his candidacy for president in the 2008 elections. Passing away on this date in history, author Laura Ingalls Wilder, also pro wrestler David Von Erich, author Alex Haley, Ernest Worrell, Jim Varney, Kurt Hennig, playwright Arthur Miller, actor Roy Scheider, actress diplomat Shirley Temple, and Jan Michael Vincent, the fine actor. Born on this date in history, Alan Hale Sr., Jimmy Durante, Lon Chaney Jr., musician, primarily the harmonica, Larry Adler, British pro wrestler Chris Adams, and wrestler Louis Spicolli. Let's see, birthdays on this date. Soprano Leontine Price, 96 years old, from It Takes a Thief, Heart to Heart, and Austin Powers. Robert Wagner, 93. Singer Roberta Flack is 86. Disney head Robert Iger, 72. Mad Money TV personality Jim Cramer. Political commentator George Stephanopoulos is 62. Jurassic Park's Laura Dern is 56. Victoria in the WWE, Lisa Marie Barone, 52. Effie Trinket in the Hunger Games and in the 2019 Charlie Angels, Elizabeth Banks, 49. From Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Stephanie Beatrix, 42. Actress Emma Roberts, 32. From The Good Wife and Sin City, Mackenzie Vega is 29. Desperate Housewives, Chloe Grace Moretz is 26. And from Blackish, Yara Shahidi is 23. Those some of the people celebrating the 10th day of February is their birthday. And if this happens to be your birthday,
happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
And from 69 years ago, February 10th, 1944, Bennett Kilpack, starring as Mr. Keene, tracer of lost persons, and the case of the boy who uses big words. Thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox here on your favorite radio station. Now on this Friday, Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, an episode of Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons, starring Bennett Kilpack, from February 10th, 1944, 69 years ago, the case of the boy who uses big words.
Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons, is on the air. Ladies and gentlemen, the makers of Colonos toothpaste present Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons, one of the most famous characters of American fiction in one of radio's most thrilling dramas. Tonight and every Thursday night from 7:30 to 8 Eastern Wartime, the famous old investigator will take from his files and bring to us one of his most celebrated missing persons cases. For Mr. Keene and the case of the boy who used big words. Our story opens in the reception room of Mr. Keene's office as Miss Ellis talks with an unusual visitor, Jimmy Harmon, who's only 12 but wears horn-rimmed glasses and a very serious manner.
Young man, you say you want to see Mr. Keene at once.
Yes, ma'am, I've got to.
Well, he's a very busy man.
I know, but the nature of my business is very imperative.
Important, you mean?
Imperative.
Such big words. What's your name?
James V. Harmon, Jr. And what's yours, if I may ask?
You may, and it's Miss Ellis.
I like you, Miss Ellis. You have a trustworthy face.
Now, Jimmy, you wouldn't be trying to get around me.
Oh, please, Miss Ellis. I've heard so much about Mr. Keene, and I know he's the only man who can help me.
Help you with what?
Well, that's very confidential.
Well, he's talking at the moment with his assistant, Mike Clancy, but I'll see what we can do.
Oh.
Come along, Jimmy.
Thank you, Miss Ellis.
Oh, Mr. Keene.
Yes, Miss Ellis?
This young man, Jimmy Harmon, insists upon seeing you.
Good morning, Jimmy.
Good morning, Mr. Keene.
I'm afraid I'm rather busy.
I know, but he says the nature of his business is very imperative.
Imperative? What in tarnation is that? Hush, Mike.
Come over, Jimmy. Sit down.
Mr. Keene, you're a gentleman.
Thank you.
Yeah, guess you won't be needing me.
Suppose I introduce you to my assistant, Mike Clancy.
I'm pleased to meet you.
I've heard about you, too, Mr. Clancy. Very reliable, they say.
Well, thank you, my boy.
Now, Jimmy, you haven't come here because any member of your family has disappeared, have you?
No, Mr. Keene. Just the opposite. We can't get rid of him.
Of whom?
Well, of my uncle, Bill Harmon.
Your father's brother?
That's right. You see, Mr. Keene, he came to visit us. Oh, approximately 6 months ago.
You mean about 6 months ago?
Approximately. Well, Uncle Bill was only supposed to stay for a week or two, but he's been staying on and on. What I don't like, well, the very first night he sat down in the parlor in the nice, big, soft chair that's always been Father's. I went up to him, and I said, Uncle Bill, that's where Father always sits.
Yeah?
Well, he works very hard, and he needs that chair to relax in.
Yeah?
Don't you think you ought to get up?
Jimmy, why don't you just go and chase yourself?
Well, have your parents objected, Jimmy?
You can't object with a man like Uncle Bill. And something more, Mr. Keene.
Yes?
His eyes are too close together, and he doesn't have much back to his head.
Oh, really?
Yes, I made a study of that. It's a sign of bad character. Now take Mr. Clancy's skull.
Mister, I thank you to leave my skull alone.
Well, I only wanted to say that your skull shows signs of excellent character.
Oh, well, now, that's different.
Jimmy, this is all very interesting, but...
Wait, Mr. Keene. There's something more.
Well?
I mean the man in black.
What man in black?
Well, I was walking on Fifth Avenue one day with Uncle Bill when this individual suddenly came out of a side street. Black suit, black derby, and black overcoat. He walked up to Uncle Bill and said,
Well, hello, Harmon.
Huh?
Fancy meeting you.
Oh, hello.
Didn't ever expect to run into me again, did you?
Look, I can explain everything.
No, I don't think you can.
I swear, the way it happened...
It happened the wrong way for you, Harmon.
Wait a minute. I can square myself. I can... Taxi! Hey, taxi! Come on, Jimmy. Hop into that cab.
And so your uncle suddenly ran away from this man in black, eh?
Yes, Mr. Keene. And now, I have a feeling that something terrible is going to happen. You've got to help me get Uncle Bill out of our house.
Jimmy, did your parents know you were coming here to see me?
Well, no, sir, I didn't tell them.
I'm afraid I don't really have any right to interfere.
But this is a dangerous situation, Mr. Keene.
Well, the kid's been to too many movies, boss.
Mr. Clancy, I resent that remark. I may be only 12 years old, but I'm not a child.
Oh, sure.
Well, Mr. Keene?
Jimmy, much as I understand your dislike for your Uncle Bill, I'm afraid this is a matter for your parents to handle.
But, Mr. Keene...
I hope you'll drop in again someday when I have a little more time. Will you do that?
All right, Mr. Keene. But I know something is going to happen. Something terrible.
Here you are, Mr. Keene. Now, if you'll just sign those letters.
Letters? Oh, yes.
You're so absent-minded today. Something bothering you?
I've been thinking about the visit we had yesterday from that strange little boy.
Jimmy Harmon? Oh, he was just scaring himself.
Jimmy has a wisdom and perception far beyond his years.
Imagination, too. Now, here are the letters, pen and ink.
Boss, Mr. Keene.
Hello, Mike. Why so excited?
Well, I bought myself an evening paper on the way to the office here, and the first item that hits me eye, saints preserve us.
Come, Mike, let's see it.
There, in the bottom of page 1. Read it, sir.
Man killed in auto accident. Boy vanishes.
Good heavens, that doesn't mean...
Police were left baffled today by an obvious hit-and-run accident early last night on Madison Avenue, which claimed the life of William Harmon, 44, of 3000 East 89th Street, where he was staying at the home of a brother. The dead man, found lying in the roadway, had gone walking with his young nephew, James Harmon Jr., age 12. But there has been no sign of the boy since the accident. Police are investigating.
Heavens above.
Hand me my hat and coat, Mike. I must talk to Jimmy's parents at once.
Oh, yes, Mr. Keene. We knew Jimmy admired you, but we didn't know he'd been to see you.
He didn't tell you, Mrs. Harmon?
No, Mr. Keene.
He always used to say that if anybody ever disappeared, you'd be sure to find him.
Well, Mr. Harmon, more than ever, I hope I can justify Jimmy's faith in me. He's a splendid boy.
So serious and so good. A sweet little owl.
The way I blame myself for this, as I've told you, Jimmy had certain premonitions.
Well, I don't know that had anything to do with it. We talked to Lieutenant Walker.
Of the Missing Persons Bureau?
Yes.
He's an old friend of mine. What was his theory?
Just a hit-and-run case. And he thinks that maybe Jimmy became unnerved at the sight of blood and ran away. Or else...
We hate to think of it.
Or else that Jimmy was also hurt and the driver maybe took him to some hospital and left him there. What do you think, Mr. Keene?
I need more facts. Now, what can you tell me about your brother, Mr. Harmon?
Well, Bill is my brother, and I don't like talking bad of the dead.
He moved in 6 months ago and just wouldn't move out again.
What was his occupation?
Occupation? I wouldn't much know. I hadn't seen him in 10 years. Business, he said.
He talked about big deals sometimes. He said he'd made a lot of money out west.
Mm-hmm. What was he supposed to be doing in New York?
Looking for some opportunity to invest.
And that's all you know?
Oh, I wish we could do something more to help you, Mr. Keene. You're so kind to drop everything like this and go hunting for Jimmy.
To me, it's the most important case of my life. Well, I'll have to go now. The Missing Persons Bureau is my next stop.
Thank you, Mr. Keene. God bless you.
Lieutenant Walker, it just happened the boy came to my office yesterday to tell me that strange story.
Well, I certainly appreciate the tip, Mr. Keene. It makes it more than just a hit-and-run accident.
I'm very much afraid so. You don't mind my stepping into the case, Lieutenant?
No, glad to have you.
About the boy, I presume you're in touch with all the hospitals?
Yes, it's still possible he was also hurt. The driver was soft-hearted enough to want to get him to a doctor.
Yes. There weren't any witnesses to the accident or whatever it was?
No one. No, excuse me. Lieutenant Walker speaking. Oh, yeah, Martin. You got a pretty good set of prints? What's that? I'll be darned. Yeah. Well, thanks anyhow.
Bad news, Lieutenant?
Funny news, Mr. Keene. I was a man at the morgue. Jeepers, there are 2 billion people in the world, and they all got fingerprints. Now, just when it would help to know...
This man has no fingerprints?
Not a trace.
You mean his fingertips have been mutilated?
Yep, the whole gang. All 10 fingers badly burned and healed over with scars.
Yes, that is news.
Yeah, clear as day. He was an old mobster. Did it deliberately to cover up his record.
Well, maybe he did once have an accident.
No. No, he belonged to a mob.
One way or another, we're up against a stone wall. Even his own brother knows nothing about it.
Well, Mr. Keene, only one thing left to do. Send out a nationwide alarm for the kid Jimmy. So, if you'll excuse me now...
I'm running along anyhow. No fingerprints. Who was he, anyhow? What was he hiding?
And so the case takes a baffling turn for Mr. Keene, tracer of lost persons.
From February 10th, 1944, Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. And we'll have the news from 69 years ago today coming up in a few minutes. A quick rant, and it can't be too long because I'm almost to the bottom of the hour break. But the folks at Sony Music are such scumbags. They continue to try to claim copyright on presidential speeches that we use here in our news segments. And it is truly frustrating, and it's quite frankly harassment. But that is the way Sony Music is, and the way things are on YouTube. They continue to try to claim copyrights to things that are not either copywritten or copyrightable. Alrighty, the news from 69 years ago when Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox continues following these words from your favorite station. Classic Radio Theater family, you know our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't stop by just creating the best pillow. He created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me because, you know, I'm working like 67 hours a day. Now, Mike's offering the best deal on his Giza Dreams bed sheets ever. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. You'll never want to sleep on anything else once you slept on a set of Giza Dream sheets. A special offer for you right now. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. Call 1-800-928-4715. Use the promo code Wyatt. Or go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Wyatt. It's good on anything on the website. That number again, 1-800-928-4715. Use my promo code Wyatt. Thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox here on your favorite station. Listening to Bennett Kilpack as Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons from 69 years ago, February 10th, 1944, in the newspapers of that Thursday, I should say. That was some 69 years ago. These were some of the headlines. U.S. heavy bombers today attacked targets at Brunswick in central Germany, according to Army headquarters. Fortresses flew in the 450-mile path to the German Aircraft Manufacturing Center, and the Berlin radio declared savage fighting developing. Meanwhile, the Germans have launched a strong attempt to break through Allied lines on the Anzio beachhead, striking at 6 points along the American-British defense perimeter. Headquarters announcing that as violence fighting continued in the ruins of Cassio. The fiercest of the beachheads came along the area north and west of Caroseto, where heavy fighting continued as British forces fought to stem the enemy plunges. Chinese troops have driven the Japanese from their strong positions 8 miles west of Taro in the northern Burma, that according to an Allied communique, but ran into determined enemy resistance 10 miles northeast of Taptha in their drive to clear the way for the new Lado Road. Japan appeared today to have abandoned Menace Mandang, her main port on the northeast coast of New Guinea, and the goal of advancing Allied troops. In Washington, members of Congress took a shuddering look at the new income tax return blanks today, and one of them, Senator Cotton Ed Smith, prophesied that the next 34 days would evoke the biggest whoopin' and a hollerin' yet heard from the taxpayers. Seldom in human history, they agreed, have so many owed so much with so few chances of figuring out the bad news unaided by a squad of accountants equipped with liquid-cooled slide rules. Those who stumbled through a search query about fiduciary income on page 1 of Form 1040 bogged down on amortizable bond premiums, page 2. With reflex action, most of the lawmakers at that point tossed the return forms to their cringing secretaries. President Roosevelt approved today and transmitted to Congress recommendations of the Budget Bureau for an additional appropriation of $150 million for the Federal Works Agency to be used in providing public works and services in more expanded communities. Congress originally allotted $500 million for this purpose and appropriated $350 million The agency has now spent most of this fund and now wants the remaining $150 million. The money is being used for such things as schools, hospitals, streets and highways, waterworks, and sewers. In a move to eliminate strikes attributed by union leaders to absence of bargaining agreements, the War Labor Board has laid down a new general policy calling on employers and unions to extend expiring collective bargaining contracts voluntarily pending negotiation of new agreements or final settlements of any issues in dispute. The union cry of no contract, no work, most recently heard in the coal and steel disputes. 3,750 strikes in the U.S. last year, and the stoppage involved 1.9 million workers, that according to Secretary of Labor Perkins. And those some of the day's top news stories as reported in the newspapers of Thursday, February 10th, 1944. On your radio, Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons. We'll hear the conclusion following these important messages. You're listening to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now, on Saturday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, we'll go back 89 years to an episode of Calling All Cars from February 11th, 1934, and the case of the cut rate murder, a young woman murdered on 99th Street. That'll be coming up on Saturday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. But now, the conclusion of Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons, and the case of the boy who used big words.
Now back to Mr. Keene as he returns once more to the home of Jimmy's parents.
See, Mr. Harmon, Mrs. Harmon, the one important thing right now is to get back in the dead man's past.
Well, I've shown you every blessed thing that was in his room, Mr. Keene.
Not one single paper there to give us a lead. One moment. Do you recall anybody who may have phoned him regularly?
Well, now come to think of it.
Yes, Mrs. Harmon.
The one person I ever knew, Bill, to have anything to do with, it was last week. Mr. Benson phoned him here 2 or 3 times.
Benson? Any idea who he was?
No.
Or where he might be reached?
See, I remember once that Bill wasn't in, and Mr. Benson left a message where to call him back.
Where? Try to remember. It may be very important.
A hotel it was. It's a funny name, like that man in England.
What man?
Lord somebody. He has to do with rationing. It was the only way I remembered.
Oh, Wilton?
That's it. The Hotel Woolton.
You say you're looking for Mr. Benson?
That's right, clerk.
You wouldn't have his first name?
I'm afraid not. All I know is that he was registered here last week.
I looked through these files. Yes, we had a Harley Benson.
Good. Is he still in the hotel?
No, checked out yesterday.
Yesterday. All the bad luck. Did he leave any home address with you?
Just Chicago.
That's a very big city. Of course, there's just a chance he might be in the Chicago telephone book.
But you'll find the out-of-town phone books on the end of the counter there.
Thank you.
Find it, sir?
Yes, here it is, thank you. Baldwin. Barton. Benson.
Any luck, sir?
No, Harley Benson. I rather imagine he wouldn't be in the phone book anyhow.
Oh, sir, if there's anything more I can do, I'll
Yes, there is. You keep records, of course, of all long-distance phone calls for your guests?
Oh, yes.
Would you mind showing me Benson's? To explain my right to ask, my name is Keene. I'm a tracer of lost persons. I'm now looking for a 12-year-old boy, Jimmy Harmon, who has disappeared.
Oh, yes, I read all about it in the papers. Let me see, the bill file's right here, Mr. Keene. Yes. Here's Benson. He made several calls.
Did he call Chicago?
Yes, sir. 3 times. His only long-distance call.
And the number he phoned?
Here you are, sir. The same all 3 times.
Thank you, clerk. That's all I need to know.
Well, here we are, boss. This is the house that Benson phoned to from New York.
Didn't expect this. prettier cottage as I've ever seen.
Well, I've known gangsters to hide out in stranger places.
All right. Strike a match now, Mike. Let's see the name on the doorbell. It says Malcolm Dugan.
It's an alias. I'm sure it's Benson. And that Benson is that man in black that Jimmy talked about.
Possibly.
Well, let's bust right in and face it.
Hey, you out there. Anything you want?
Well, you see,
I seen you through the window, prowling around in the dark.
Indeed you did, Benson.
How'd you know my name?
That's a long story. I've come all the way from New York to talk with you. So I didn't expect to find you under the name of Dugan.
Dugan's a cousin of mine. I board here.
May we come in?
Sure. Why not?
Now then, my name is Keene.
Say, not the detective.
That's right. This is my assistant, Mike Clancy.
Okay. What's next?
What do you know about Bill Harmon?
Bill Harmon?
A gunman, huh? Trigger man for one of the Chicago mobs. Alky racket. Or was it dope? Or maybe black market. And you did him in.
Oh, wait a minute, Clancy. Back up.
All right. Tell us in your own way.
Harmon ain't no mobster. He was the same as what I still am.
And what's that?
A prison guard in the Lakeshore Penitentiary.
A prison guard?
Sure, until 5 years ago when he quit. I didn't hear a word from him until I was in New York on vacation last week and ran into him on the street.
On the street? You get that, boss?
1 second, Mike. Benson, are you in the habit of wearing black suits and overcoats?
Me? You think I'm an undertaker?
Well, now, when you ran into Harmon, did he tell you what he was doing?
Well, the salesman, he said. We had a couple of beers together 2 or 3 times. He didn't talk much.
Tell me, was there any special reason why he left his job at the penitentiary?
No, just quit.
And what were his duties?
Same as me, guarding the death house. And come to think of it...
Yes?
There was something a little funny in his quitting. He did it just a couple of hours before that big racketeer, Legs Mosley, was burned.
Mosley? Oh, yes.
And Harmon just walked out. Said he had enough executions. Look, it happens that way sometimes with a guard.
Yes, I've heard.
But now I remember something else. The minute Legs came out for his last walk to the chair, he asked for Harmon. Where's Harmon, he says. He's got to be here. He's always here. I said Harmon had a previous appointment.
So Legs kept asking for him?
Yeah, Mr. Keene. Think it meant anything?
Tell me something else, Benson. Are there any members of the old Mosley mob still in the penitentiary that I could talk to?
No, not a one. Tell you what, though. There is a guy in the pen, a lifer, who was supposed to burn the same night with Mosley. He got reprieved to life. His name is Rayburn. Like to talk to him?
You bet I would. The first thing tomorrow morning. Rayburn, I gather you're no gangster.
No, Mr. King. I committed my murder over a woman.
Well, as I've told you, I'm trying my best to trace a fine 12-year-old boy who's disappeared. Somehow the trail leads right here to the penitentiary.
How do you mean?
It's too long a story to tell right now. There's only one question I want to ask.
Yes, sir?
Why did Bill Harmon suddenly quit his job as a guard in the death house a few hours before Mosley's execution?
Well, you see...
And why didn't Harmon have the nerve to go into the death chamber that night to see him executed?
Mr. Keene, I don't want to get anybody in trouble.
Don't worry about that. Harmon is dead. The question now is to try to save the life of an innocent boy. Well, why did Harmon quit?
Well, because he welched on a bargain.
Welched? How?
Well, while Legs Mosley was waiting to burn, some of his gang reached Bill Harmon and made a proposition. They would pay him $20,000 if he would help spring Legs from the death house. The brains of the plan was a fellow called Blackie.
Blackie?
Well, they called him that because he always dressed in black. Blackie Westlake.
Yes, go right on.
Well, the way I got the story, Harmon agreed. But he wanted some of the money in advance. So they gave him $10,000, and he would get the rest after Legs was over the wall and free. I knew all about it because they were going to let me walk out the same time.
Harmon never carried out his crooked bargain.
No, Mr. King. Talk of crooks out-crooking each other. He took the $10,000 and beat it. Legs died in the chair. I got a reprieve. But that's ancient history, isn't it?
Yes, Ancient history that suddenly came back to life. Thank you, Rayburn.
Why, sure, boss, it's as plain as day now. Blackie Westlake and the other members of the old mob killed Harmon for revenge.
Yes, and abducted Jimmy because he had once seen Blackie before and was in a position to identify him to the police.
Right.
Now the next step. We phone Lieutenant Walker in New York and ask him to send out an alarm.
For every member of the old Mosley mob.
No, Mike. Just for Blackie Westlake.
And why just for Blackie?
To start a civil war.
Boss, I don't get it.
You know the old saying, when thieves fall out, honest men get their due? Mike, that's the only way of getting Jimmy safely out of the hands of those gangsters.
Oh, psychology stuff.
Right. Let's phone Walker now and then get back to New York.
Good morning, Professor. How do you do, Professor?
Oh, it's you. The hoodlum they call Blackie.
Next on that hoodlum stuff.
Well, that's what you are. When are you going to let me out of this cellar?
When I feel like it. Get back there or I'll slap you. That's better. Looks all right. I brought you a sandwich out of the kindness of my heart.
I don't want your sandwich. Why are you keeping me here?
Because you're too darn smart, Professor. You saw us bump off your dear uncle. I'll let you go. The cops will take you to headquarters. You'd identify my picture.
Just what I thought. You're one of those habitual criminals.
Shut up.
I can tell that from the shape of your ears and the index of your cranium.
Stop that highbrow stuff. My cranium's all right.
Where is this place you're keeping me?
A warehouse. And a lot nearer your home place than you think.
I'm sick of it. It's cold. Let me out of here.
You stay right here till the noise dies down. Now go on. Get back. Get back or I'll smack you.
Take your hand off me. Let me go.
Oh, yeah?
You slapped me right in the face. You knocked my glasses off.
And that's only a sample.
Let me out of here. Let me go.
Little wise guy.
Hey, Blackie. Blackie.
Yeah, Montana?
Look at here. I was just outside and got a newspaper.
So what?
Me and the others are scrambling out of here.
Why?
Look at this paper, the front page.
Let me see. Oh.
Blackie Westlake hunted in murder and abduction. That means you.
I thought I was covered up the whole way.
You ain't, but we are.
Now, wait a minute,
You're
Montana.
hot, Blackie, hot as fire. The whole town's looking for you. So the rest of us is taking the car and scrambling. Because we're still in the clear.
You're not walking out on me. You're staying right here. If we burn together.
Not in your life, Blackie.
Okay, maybe this'll teach you.
Oh, you rat! Larry, French, come quick!
Oh, so you want to shoot it out, huh?
Oh, Mr. Keene, it just makes me sick to think of Jimmy in the hands of those gangsters.
He's a bright boy, Mrs. Harmon. We can count on him handling himself intelligently.
Besides, Mother, the police are hunting everywhere.
Yes, but they might take weeks and still not find him.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Harmon. I've done my best. Now it's only a question of letting nature take its course.
Nature? But, Mr. Keene, those men are killers.
That's exactly what I'm counting on. You see...
Oh, the door.
Now go and see. Just remain calm, Mother.
Hello, everybody.
Jimmy.
Oh, Jimmy. Oh, Jimmy. Thank God you're back again. Jimmy, my
Hello,
darling.
Mother. Hello, Dad.
Oh, darling, did those men hurt you? Are you all right?
We're just a little hungry. Relax, everybody.
Oh, Jimmy, we were just about crazy with worry. Where were you?
In a warehouse in Brooklyn.
Well, how did you ever get away from there?
In a police car. Thanks to Mr. Keene. I guess you'd like to know what happened, Mr. Keene.
Yes, Jimmy, I certainly would.
Well, just about an hour ago, I was locked in the cellar. But I heard an argument start. The rest of the gang wanted to run away without Blackie. Suddenly, they were shooting all over the place. When the police came a little later, they were all dead or dying. Like the Kilkenny cat.
Good heavens.
You see, Mr. Keene, they didn't have much loyalty to each other.
Yes, Jimmy, that's exactly what I was counting on.
Mr. Keene, Lieutenant Walker told me how you did it while he was driving me back. Psychology, that's what you call it.
Whatever it was, Mr. Keene, you saved Jimmy's life.
How can we ever thank you?
My own happiness is reward enough.
Mr. Keene, there was something I wish to request of you.
Yes. What's that?
Well, when I grow up, may I have a position in your organization?
Well, Jimmy, I never had a higher compliment from anybody. Of course you may.
Listen next week at the same time when Mr. Keene brings us the fascinating case of Mr. Trevor's secret. You've been listening to Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons. Now on the air at a new time, every Thursday night, 7:30 to 8 Eastern Wartime, over this network. Don't miss Mr. Keene next Thursday night when the kindly old Tracer turns to the case of Mr. Trevor's secret. This is Larry Elliott saying good night for the makers of Colonos Toothpaste and inviting you to listen to Friday on Broadway at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Wartime over most of these stations tomorrow night.
February 10th, 1944, Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thank you for making us a part of your day. Please thank this radio station and support their advertisers. It is their kindness and courtesy that allows us to be with you each and every time we roll around here on your favorite station. Miss a day, you don't have to miss a single show. All of our shows are available on demand at classicradio.stream. Classicradio.stream. Stream our shows. Learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can contact me directly. You can find our social media links. And you can also buy me a coffee. The Buy Me a Coffee money does not buy me coffee, but really what it does is it helps us acquire additional classic radio collections. That is at classicradio.stream. Thanks for tuning in on this Friday. Have a great weekend. Tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.